Good evening, everyone. It is a special meeting of the Community Services Committee of the Common Council here on this, the 4th of May, and it's 5:33. I'm calling it to order. I'm Dominique Johnson, the chair, and I will do a roll call here to get us started. I'm checking my agenda, just making sure we have our, somebody was transferred over. We had one of our committee members not as a panelist, so.
I'm looking for his name in the attendee section. I don't see it at the moment. So it might take a few seconds for him to get on.
Oh, thank you. And thanks to the public for waiting as we do this. Appreciate it. I'll mention you just sent an invite as well, another invite.
I think he's the phone number, the 203 number at the top.
Right, Heidi, yes, it is that is him. Okay, very good. Thanks, Heidi, for catching that. So if we could promote that phone number to panelists, Tyler, that would be fabulous.
Sure, it actually looks like we're unable to promote a phone number to a panelist. It doesn't give that option when hovered over.
Okay.
Which is unfortunate, actually. Let me see if there's a way to work around that.
Okay. Well, I'll just text him right now to please try the new link. And then we can proceed, and hopefully we can, Mr. Keegan won't miss too much of the beginning here. I
know that he's been able to attend meetings through his phone before. He's been able to get in. He might have to open Zoom on his phone.
Yeah, if he goes ahead and goes on his email on his phone, that'll work just as good. But I believe when somebody calls in, since emails are the only things that are listed as panelists, it doesn't recognize a phone number as being able to be a panelist, which is why we're not seeing that option. So, Mr. Keegan, if you're listening, if you want to go ahead and open up the email on your phone or computer if you're near it, that should fix our problem.
I've just texted him a similar thing here. Okay, and in the interest of time, hopefully we can get to the roll call. I mean, obviously, when he arrives, I'll be sure to put that in the record. Thanks, everyone, for waiting. So yes, we are convened. I already established that, and I'd like to do a roll call for us. As I mentioned, I am here present, and I also see Council Member Barbara Smith, Council Member Heidi Alterman,
Here.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Alterman. Councilmember Greg Burnett is here.
Present.
Thank you, Councilmember Burnett. I also see, for the record, Councilmember Tom Livingston is here as an attendee. And I have do not see Councilmember Diana Revolus is not in attendance. And I have a statement from Councilmember Ayers that she would like me to read into the record. She is not in attendance tonight, and she states, I, Nicole Ayers, District A Common Council member, is asking to be recused from the special meeting of the Community Service Committee being held on May 4, 2022 via Zoom. So for the record, Councilmember Ayers is recused from this meeting. And we do have a quorum, and when Councilmember Tom Keegan can make it in officially, I will enter that into the record. I don't see his phone number there anymore. And also for the record, we have with us tonight, as usual, Chief Lamont Daniels. We have Human Services Director Anna Vivian Estrella, and Director of Communications Michelle Woods Matthews is here as well, for the record. All right. Hopefully Mr. Keegan can get on really soon. I want to move us along, though, so that we can keep things going. So the next item on our agenda is, this is a special meeting. We have one item, and we will get to that. But for public comments on that item, we can now open that up. And I'd like to just remind folks, if you haven't been in public comment before, you have 3 minutes. So I'll give you a 10-second warning when you're approaching that. And you can either raise your hand in the Zoom, and that's how we know that you would like to speak during public comment. And also, just as a note, we do not keep track of the Q&A. So please, if you are here for public comment, please do so now in the public comment period, because we will not be able to keep track of that Q&A during the meeting. All right, thank you very much. I do see 2 hands up already, so we can begin the public comment. And the first is Juan Wiggins. If you could promote him, please, that'd be fabulous. Thank you.
If you're ready, you'll be allowed to unmute.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wiggins.
Hey, everyone. Nice to see you again. I want to start off by saying, once again, if you know me, you know how passionate I am about the work that I do in the organization that I run and am a part of. As you can hear in the background, you might hear that we got a bunch of students here now, right? Just kind of running rampant while our program coordinator is out there and one of our staff helpers. But once again, I just want to state that, this funds was for, those in the community mostly affected by COVID, right? And we know most of the people that are affected by COVID is Black and brown people serving, South Norwalk. Me personally, heard that a lot of organizations received calls yesterday or a few days ago asking the metrics from Lamont, right? Asking the metrics and how many people is served on these from the organizations. To me, that is shown as a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge about the organizations, and that organizations was picked without doing the research, right? And I think it's important for us to really think about these biases, right? That we talk about, that we mention, but we don't talk about enough, right? These implicit biases that's happened when choosing things like this. So I think I know the vote is a good chance the vote is going to go through, but I really want to continue to highlight, the small organizations, the people that's on the ground doing them, because when I've looked at all the organizations and did my research, I realized that a lot of the funds is going to positions, right? Helping one family, when it's other organizations like our own that's helping in many families and helping many students, right? So I just want you guys to please keep in mind, not to try to stop the train that's already happening, but how can we better serve the community and smaller organizations that's on the ground dealing with these students and families on a day-to-day, right? And I mentioned this before. I'm not going to mention any names. One of our students ended up getting arrested, right? And it's like, if we have more resources, if we have more, things that can engage these students, these things wouldn't happen. So I don't want to turn and look away from the things that matters most. Not saying that these positions, that these great organizations, let me say that, would help and serve the community, but like, we're not guaranteed that it would change the community, right? Because you could hire someone right now.
I'll give you the 10-second. Thank you.
Okay, you can hire someone right now and it might not be a good service. You might have to fire them, but these kids and these families need help right now. And I think it's really important for us to keep that stuff in mind. So that's it. Thank you guys. Once again.
Mr. Wiggins, appreciate it. Next on our list for public comment, I see Brenda Smith. Ms. Smith?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm Brenda Smith. I'm a Norwalk resident on Cannon Street and also Campbelly director. And I would like to address the ARPA funding discussion, specifically the question about funds possibly not being allocated to organization serving the most vulnerable and at-risk members of our community. And I would like to speak about Camp Belly to the committee members. Since 2015, Camp Belly, which is an extension of the Early Language and Literacy Initiative here at Stepping Stones, has served nearly 700 Norwalk families by providing their children with little or no preschool experience, an opportunity for free, high quality summer enrichment programming before heading into kindergarten classrooms within Norwalk Public Schools. During the current NPS kindergarten registration process, which I help our Ellie families through, and because Camp Ellie, that's our main focus, 91 children have been identified as having no preschool experience. All across America, schools have been seeing the social and emotional impact of the pandemic. More and more students are coming to school lacking in social skills and are ill-equipped to self-regulate. And the #1 request that I've heard from kindergarten teachers in Norwalk is for incoming students to have the coping, social, and expressive language skills necessary to be independent, attentive, and focused. Yet Norwalk has very few summer enrichment programs for preschool age children. Now more than ever, as early education services have been interrupted by the pandemic, it's essential to fund summer recovery efforts like Camp Belly to ensure that these students have the literacy and social emotional support they need before making that landmark transition into kindergarten. And funding these efforts now will put at-risk students on a more equitable footing with their classmates as they enter kindergarten. We're more than a kindergarten preparedness program. We work with families throughout the enrollment process, getting support that they might need through community connections like the Welcome Center here in Norwalk. We provide—
I'll give you 10 seconds. Thank you.
Okay. Basically what I want to say is those Stepping Stones has cast a wide net for funders, including corporate, foundation, you name it. We're finding that the funding opportunities for the pre-kindergarten learners is not there. So we hope that this opportunity through the ARPA funding with the city of Norwalk, that you'll see it as a vital opportunity to
She must have dropped off. I see her dropped off, but oh, she's there. Well, thank you, Ms. Smith. We didn't catch that last part, but thank you very much. Appreciate that. Just for the record, at 5:43, Mr. Tom Keegan's cell phone number, he confirmed via text to me that is him and he's listening, and that should he not be able to get on as a panelist, he will text me his vote, but he is listening. So for the record, he is in attendance at 5:43, Mr. Tom Keegan, Councilmember Tom Keegan. Thank you very much. Back to public comment. I see next is Renee Rosenbluth. Ms. Rosenbluth.
Hi there. My name is Renee Rosenbluth. I'm the Executive Director for Horizons at Norwalk Community College. We're one of the organizations put forth to receive ARPA funding through the city of Norwalk. We serve 130 children in grades pre-K through 9th grade. They are Norwalk residents. To be accepted into our program, they must qualify for free or reduced fee lunch based off of the financial eligibility guidelines put in place by the federal government, and our program is completely free to them. They are children of color from Norwalk, and our goal as an organization is to bridge the academic and opportunity gaps that they face and that have only been exacerbated by COVID-19. The funding we are set to receive will support social emotional learning curriculum, activities, and staff for our pre-K students this summer, and continue with school after school during the upcoming school year. I myself have worked in the nonprofit field for 15 years with organizations in New York City and Connecticut, with budgets ranging from $500,000 to $60 million. I've been involved with grant writing, grant applications, grant reporting at each of these organizations. And I found that the City of Norwalk's eligibility requirements for this funding was straightforward, the deadline to submit gracious, and the scoring rubric to be standard. It is also very common to have no knowledge of who completes a scoring rubric or a say in who is choosing grant recipients. It's also necessary for any fiscally responsible and sustainable nonprofit to have multiple and diversified streams of funding in order to survive and serve the community with continuity. I hope that those opposed to this funding moving forward have reconsidered and understand that there's always grant opportunities that may or may not be the best fit for a nonprofit. Thank you.
Very much, Ms. Rosenbluth. Appreciate it very much. I see next Adriana Lewis.
Hello, my name is Adriana Lewis.
Thank you,
I
Adriana.
do work with, hello. I do work with Dewan, and I actually really find that this meeting, multiple meetings about funding and how certain nonprofits don't get the funding they need to survive or to even fund the community for the youth. All these businesses and nonprofits are for the youth. And it's kind of like hard to see that all these people that's fighting for the youth and not the council people of Norwalk that's supposed to serve us is not providing what they need to continue their services. So I think like it should and it is necessary for them to continue fighting for this and getting the funding they need to continue these great programs. So this is just something from the youth. Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. Next on our list for public comment is at Prodigy.vocals.
Hi guys, how's it going? That's Prodigy. This is my artist name. I'm actually an artist, but my real name is Brandon Joseph, and I'm actually the first YBI student. Dewan is like a big brother to me and actually has been helping me become into, a successful young man. And I just want to say that I personally feel like this funding will really take the youth of Norwalk to the, to the next level in terms of success. So I just want to say that growing up, I didn't really have that much of a, support group. Like I had, I did go to therapy all the time, but they never really, a lot of people in the community, they never really actually tried to make sure, that I was, taken care of or actually there to help me. I had a lot of people in the community that, even when I went to about certain things, they said, oh, you could come to me for this or you could come to me for that, and never really actually helped me in certain aspects. YBI is literally preparing the youth to be great people and great grown-ups. And I honestly feel that this, this funding is literally going to help us to not only just make Norwalk a better city, but make, the youth of Norwalk become, legendary people that we're going to look up and be like, wow, okay, nobody really has seen this amount of success from, the youth and actually pouring into us now. This money is actually going to help us. For example, I'm very passionate about music. I've been singing since I was like 5 years old at Norwalk Seventh-day Adventist Church right there on South Main Street in South Norwalk. And I always wanted to get in the studio. I always wanted to do things with music, but nobody really, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
I've been to many studios. I'm not going to say any names of the studios, trying to see if I could get some internships here and there. And nobody really actually helped me, lead me on the pathway to make my dreams come true of having my own studio. I'm 18 years old, and literally right now, any YBI student can tell you, Dewan has given me the platform to open my own studio at 18 years old. And this summer, that studio will be open to the public. All right. And that's just one example. Mind you, he never had to do that. And this is just the beginning of, I'm just one student. So imagine how many people have dreams and hopes and don't even open their mouth because they know, like, where am I going to start?
Joseph, I'll give you 10 seconds. Thank you very much.
You know, I'm just going to leave it right there. I'm just one example. And this money is actually helping you to be not only great people from Norwalk, but legends. Thank you.
Next on our public comment is Genesis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, so I'm Genesis. I'm a program coordinator for a small nonprofit organization also in Norwalk. And I'm one of the, few on payroll, and part of that is because of funding. And like, we need help. I see it every day because it's just me now here, and without money we can't really hire people. Not a lot of people have like the time to come in and just work for free or volunteer their time, so funding is very important. But I do have a few questions that may or may not be answered in the rest of this video. I would like the names and the numbers of all on committee members that pick the programs. I also would like to know what is considered a startup. What committee makes the final decisions, and what are their comparative notations? Also, what steps will be taken to help increase access and means to smaller organizations, because we need it, and we're targeting like pretty much the kids that are being left behind. So we're very important, even though we're just starting off, or not as experienced as other bigger organizations. That doesn't change what we do for the community and how much help we need. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Genesis. Appreciate that. Next is Connecticut Building Congress.
Hi, it's actually Michelle Hobson. I do apologize that I was logged in. I've jumped in from one Zoom to another.
Thank you, Ms. Hobson.
Hi, hello. My name is Michelle Hobson. I am Dewan's Chief Operating Officer. And I just wanted to relay the passion of the youth and Dewan. What we're trying to push is advanced leadership. And we're hoping as someone who's an organizer and operator of a nonprofit, that we are a reflection of the community, and that we continue to push the community and members just like you for advanced leadership. And we're kindly asking, this is not about hurt feelings and not getting the monies. And we understand that there's many multiple funding streams, whether it's grantsmanship, special events, donorship, plan giving. I get it. We get it. What we're kindly asking is that, we're not trying to block the money. We want to make sure that organizations just like YBI that are grassroots are given additional outlets for either funding or collaborative efforts, so that we can figure out how we can work together, right? What we're really hoping is that there's some kind of conditional approval, right? You all, the ARPA money and going to these organizations, yes, that's one thing. But if you can kindly consider a conditional approval with some kind of follow-up actions to those smaller organizations that didn't place or didn't get award monies, that there's some kind of special committee or task force that's created, or some kind of a conditional approval that will help shine a light on start moving that collaborative efforts for us. Again, our goal is to be part of the community, make impact of the community, represent the community, and really focus on those the young people younger than 25, because guess what? In our Fairfield County, they earn the least. They make at least 38K and under. And we want to make sure kids like Brandon are empowered to say, hey, the median household income in Fairfield County is 175, and I'm going to be there, right? And we want to make sure we have youth that are part of the economy in South Norwalk and Norwalk, so that they are not in the legal system, right? Or re-entering the legal system. So if we can kindly just reiterate follow-up resources for organizations just like us who didn't get the award this time, or even a task force that's generated. I think that would be the biggest win for an organization like us. So thank you for your advanced leadership. Thank you for seeing both sides, seeing the yes, no, and the abstentions. And we appreciate all that you're doing. And we really would like to make sure that we make a continued impact in the community moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hobson, very much. Appreciate it. I see your hand went back up, or no. Okay. All right, we're good. Thank you. Let's see. Anybody else attendees would like to make public comment right now? You can raise your hand in the Zoom to do so. Anybody in attendance would like to make public comment? Anybody in attendance would like to make public comment? This will be a last call for that. Just want to remind people, we don't check the Q&A, so please, now's the time to make your comment. I see Tristan Fields. Mr. Fields?
Hi, good evening. This is Tristan Fields. I'm the president of Help Inc. Help Kids in Norwalk prepare for college. The thing that I have for public comment is, you know, I think the comment was made in the last couple meetings around the fact that it seemed like the same organizations that have been getting funding for years was also awarded funding. And that if we're going to have any sort of change, then we have to do something different with that funding. I hear the concerns around the folks wanting to make sure that the money is going to established organizations. But I will say that a lot of nonprofits go from being small to larger ones as a result of connections to individual foundations. So large gifts from a couple of institutions or a couple of foundations, which in the end ends up shaping and guiding the mission, right? Lots of gifts are not unrestricted. I've done part of my career in alumni affairs and development and higher ed. So I would just, you know, implore that a lot of the times these grants given by objective institutions and government institutions are ways that grassroots organizations like mine are able to forward our missions without necessarily shaping them to the wills of you know, donors that want to give large gifts. So you know, I appreciate the time. I was just echoing sentiments that was said earlier in the last meeting around the concerns of the same organizations that have been established getting the money. And I hear the concerns about capacity and worrying that these programs that start won't be able to continue after the funding is over. But once again, you know, if we're going to do something different, we need to, if we want different impact, then we have to use different funding. So just adding that as a counterpoint and making sure that goes into the consideration. And even if the process was done with all good intentions around not being biased, we know that implicit bias plays a role. And so if we get an outcome that is inequitable, then I think it's important for us to take a step back and look at, you know, even if we had the best intentions of being equitable, if the outcome became inequitable, how did we have that implicit bias creep in? So I appreciate and I cede my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Appreciate it very much. I see Joshua for public comment. Yes,
Hi,
Joshua.
my name is Joshua. I have one question for you. What are y'all gonna do for the youth of Connecticut? That's all I gotta ask.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Appreciate that. Anyone else for public comment? Any of the attendees would like to speak? Please raise the hand in the Zoom so we know. One more call. Anyone else like to participate in public comment? Make your comment now. Please use the raise hand function. All right. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to correspondence. Did anybody on the committee receive any correspondence related to the item on our agenda this evening in the past? since our last meeting? Seeing and hearing none, and for Mr. Keegan, who is listening, he can text me as such. I can get him on the phone now, perhaps. Okay, seeing and hearing none, then Chief Daniels, did you receive any correspondence?
I have not.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, what I'll do then, given that, is I will close public comment. And we can move on to our next item, number 3, a presentation by our Chief of Community Services, Lamont Daniels, on the American Rescue Plan Act Recovery, Community Recovery Fund Program. And I'll pass the floor over to you, Chief Daniels, and in the meantime, get our colleague on my cell phone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair Johnson. And I also want to thank those that have shared their thoughts in public comment. They were very helpful and very beneficial, and my department do take them seriously. I also hope that through this presentation, I can respond and answer many of the questions that the public may also have. So Madam Chair Johnson, I do have a presentation, but I would like to start off with a few remarks. So at the onset of this process, the city outlined our goals for this project and the thorough steps that we would take to complete it. We noted that this will be a competitive process from the federal funding that we receive, known as the American Rescue Plan Act. So you may hear me go back and forth and say ARPA. The ARPA funds were to provide local assistance to nonprofit organizations that have been adversely and economically impacted by the pandemic. We also noted that these funds are intended to benefit the needs of our residents, in which several areas of focus were identified that I'll share in the presentation. I also want to share that this process was fair and that each reviewer took their role seriously without judgment or bias. Overall, the city, as the recipient of federal funds, had an obligation to ensure that the expenses of every organization met the criteria and was allowable under the federal guidelines. Unfortunately, the demand for funding far exceeded the amount we were allocated to distribute. And I cannot emphasize that enough. So tonight you will hear about the guiding principles as outlined from the Federal Registry. You will also hear the best practices that were used and adopted from the Council of Nonprofits and the methodology. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank every individual, including the reviewers, and every organization that participated in this process. I know that each of you took valuable time out of your lives to either review the applications or submit an application for the purpose of our shared vision, and that is to better and improve the lives of the residents of Norwalk. We also ask that everyone to respect the process that was laid out earlier this year that has now since been executed and today is being delivered for a vote to approve. So thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, and I'll just have, because the the faces all sometimes go over the slide deck, so I also have my copies in front of me. So if I'm looking down, I'm just also looking at my notes as well. So tonight, I would like to share with you what the review and selection process was. Just to refresh ourselves, give me one moment because everything is kind of popping up in front of me as things happen when you're live. The American Rescue Plan was passed in 2021 to provide for strong and equitable recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. ARPA provided over $350 billion across the country, and Norwalk received our fair share as well. In the documents, eligible uses of ARPA was identified, addressing ongoing public health response costs, addressing the negative economic impacts of COVID-19, and supporting our operations. Nonprofits who already provide an array of services to Norwalk residents and with additional funds we believe could scale up to do more of what they are already doing and where the needs were increasing. For nonprofits truly are a safety net. So I want to start off by explaining some of our guiding principles. And this is taken directly from the treasury.gov, which was the facilitator of the ARPA dollars. And I'm not going to read everything, but I want to highlight a few things where it says funding projects for public health. I'm on the second bullet. To meet urgent community needs. And the guiding principles is to move swiftly and create effective implementation, which was vital, but then balancing simple and rapid program access widely across the community and maintaining a robust documentation and compliance regimen. This also online bullet number 3, that project should advance shared interests and promote equitable delivery of government benefits and opportunities to underserved communities. And you will see that we made every effort and worked to do just that. We also use the guiding principles from the Council of Nonprofits, which is a national organization, of how to allocate ARPA funds to local nonprofits. And we were guided by what they identified as the highest priority, projects that have a direct impact on vulnerable populations. And then services that have expanded due to COVID-19 are now maintaining pandemic level services. We also outlined our budget related principles. These are one-time projects that entail no ongoing costs, specifically to ARPA. So those that are being proposed to receive funding are aware that this is a one-time investment. And then projects that produce matched and or leverage resources. And I'll be able to share that later on. And then additional principles that we use is projects that led to opportunity. And specifically, those are examples like workforce development. So it wasn't just about funding an organization, but what is that opportunity for that resident? And by using the example of funding job training programs, the hope and the desire or the outcome or impact rather would be that that resident can then get a job, get better jobs with better credentials. Again, from the Council of Nonprofit, equity. Equity is talked about both from a best practice perspective and through the federal legislation, ask communities to look at equity as we deliver and create our programming. Again, I'm not going to read everything, but just want to point out that number 3, that some of the best practice were to try to get this money out as fast as you can, giving our governmental processes. Why? Because our community is hurting. I've been on the front lines. Many of you know that during COVID and height, for almost several months, and many of you have joined me on the front lines, passing out food to thousands of cars in the city of Norwalk. I also had an opportunity to talk to our residents to learn and hear how things were going and what was going on. So we wanted to move very quickly and rapidly, but with respect to not only our internal processes, but our legislative process to you, but also the process that was laid out. And then number 4 is being accountable and being transparent to the process. So what was our operational plan? So background work we started in June 2021, compiling information on regulations, existing city priorities and priority gaps, communication with the nonprofit community and various groups to understand what those needs are. I think many people know, and those that may be watching, if you're not on our every other Friday nonprofit call that I mentioned several weeks ago, I would encourage you to do so. That is the go-to place to learn what services and resources are available in the city of Norwalk. That group was very instrumental in helping us articulate what those priorities are. And then if you recall, on October 12, 2021, the city as a whole presented our priorities and plan to the Common Council last year in October. And then phase 2, we developed the plan. I presented to this Community Services Committee to talk about the plan, to develop the strategy, the goals consistent with our priorities, defining metrics that can measure progress, and created that plan to move forward. And then phase 3, implementing a plan at the beginning of this year. Excuse me, just drinking a lot of water. Outreach and education in the application recruitment. You may or may not know that my department also provided 2 live webinars, both to meet the needs of promoting the information and having nonprofit organizations to ask questions. And we did 2 at 11 a.m. and then also at 6 p.m. To really address those who can be available. And I also say for those that may understanding that I've been a nonprofit founder as well, working during the day, but also providing services at night. So we intentionally specifically held a webinar at 6 p.m. to meet those needs. And then February, we launched our online application, and then the process applications. And I think we all know where we are today. So I wanted to share and highlight, and this all can be found on the website. We created the norwalkct.org/ARPA. So we posted the webinar, the application, and a slide deck. And again, I'm not going to go over everything, but I hope you all can see it. But this lays out what the basic eligibility criteria. And again, as pointed, these are basic, common criteria for any organization, both private and public, around eligibility criteria, that every organization had to be a 501c3, focus on the benefit of the lives of Norwalk, provide IRS determination, provide financial statements, provide 990s, be willing to enter a contractual agreement with the city. What this body may not know is that funding requests cannot exceed in excess of 50% of the organization's total annual expenses. Funding proposals directly to individuals will not be considered, and an organization must be in operation for more than 3 years. The application process. Organizations that met those requirements should happily apply online to be considered for funding. And from what I just think, Joyce and IT team, this is our first effort of going online so that we weren't doing paper. And I think it was pretty successful. I hope those that submitted and you interfaced it felt the same way. So applications will be reviewed by the city, by my department for complete applications, and then they were sent to the ARPA review committee, comprised of both city and independent subject matter experts for consideration to be funded. ARPA includes language that may require grant recipients to meet additional financial compliance guidelines, depending on what service category that the organization were applying for. Under the federal guidelines, there were specific metrics that they also had to comply with beyond what the city required. And we asked that the applicant be familiar. It's a pretty large book. So our job and our goal was try to summarize the major points, but it was important for all recipients to look at the federal guidelines. As you all recall, these are our priorities: eviction, early care and education, homeless, workforce initiatives, behavioral and mental health, and youth prevention. So I'm going to now switch and move to our methodology and criteria. Again, noting that it was anticipated that will be more demand for funding than will be available to meet the needs of every applicant. So this was a highly competitive grant process that we developed. So the reviewer recruitment, the city selected reviewers for their knowledge, skills, and expertise related to a particular priority area. The reviewers evaluated and scored each application according to the scoring rubric and its criteria for evaluation. And the reviewers considered each application on its own merit. Reviewers considered only what was specifically written in the application. I also want to note that the city also tried to develop review groups based on gender and ethnic diversity. Our review process. Screening applications. Community department screened applications for completion. The first review, reviewers evaluated and individually scored applications through a fair, equitable, and objective process. Secondly, the deliberation review. And what this means that review was deliberated together and assigned a joint numerical score to recommend or not recommend. So each reviewer scored it individually. They then met as a group and deliberated and submitted one joint score as a group. And then the second review, in addition to the first level of deliberation and review, some grants were subject to the review of the Chief of Community Services and Chief Financial Officer. The second level of review was required for programs that requested funding over $150,000. Our goal was to assist as many organizations as possible. So those organizations that came over 150, there was a second level to review their budget and just to look at it to ensure that the impact that they may have outlined, we agreed with. Our scoring instruction. So applications were scored on a scale of 0 to 100. Each review team deliberated, as I pointed out. Scores greater than 80 were considered for a recommendation of approval. Based on the allocation through ARPA, the city then reserved the right to fund in full, partially, or not at all, even if the panel agreed to recommend for funding, and I'll be able to share more data on that momentarily. So roughly 40 organizations submit applications totaling $2.5 million. As you all know, the city was only allocated 1.5, or the Community Recovery Fund rather. So if all were funded, we would need an additional $1 million. And so again, the very, very difficult task to decide where to fund. So these are the due diligence questions. The city has an obligation to ensure that the funding meet the needs of our residents, that the organization is able to provide and execute the services. So these questions were looked at after the review panel decided whether to approve or not approve. What programs organizations are already working to meet the goals of ARPA funding? How can a partnership approach improve outcomes? Does the proposed budget seem functional? What is the financial condition and strength of the organization's overall operating budget? And again, remember, these are public federal funds. And I totally understand the concerns. However, we also believe that to put organizations at risk to misuse funding was also a concern. So we wanted to make sure that funding would go out to make sure that the organization was well positioned and had the infrastructure for the extensive reporting. Does the proposal provide great detail as to how the program will be sustained after the grant award has been exhausted? And I'll expand on it a little bit more. And that looks at the sustainability. And then what prior experience and length of time does the organization have in providing the proposed services and programming that they were proposing? And what experience does the organization have in managing federal funds in previous audits? Because that was a requirement that is part of the organization's contract, to agree that they agree that if at any point the federal government, again, these are not our rules or criteria, that they would have to comply with any federal audit. And then how quickly can the organization ramp up their service delivery to help residents, which is why the criteria for 3 years are up, so that organizations who can just move very quickly to move the money out and help serve our residents. Okay, so I'm going to shift to some data points around the applicants that are being proposed before you. So this is a pie chart, as you can see, and I hope it's, I can see it fine. I'm not sure if you all can see it. And as you can see, between 14,000 and 50,000, there was 12 proposals that requested funding in that amount. And from between 50,001 and 100,000, there were 17 organizations. There were 4 organizations that asked for 100,000 between 200. And then there was 1 organization that asked for 200,000 and up. And then you can see on my right side, the pie chart with green of what the proposed awards. So 8 between 7 to 50, 11 between 50,000 to 100,000, and 3, between 100,000 and 170,000. The federal impact category. So these are the 3 impact categories that we were allowed to use in terms of funding. And you can see it's pretty a third, which is consistent with what we had envisioned. So a third of funding went to organizations that address public health, and that includes mental health services and substance abuse services. A third of funding, about 37%, was being proposed rather to eviction services and job training programs assistance. And then a third went to services to disproportionately impacted communities, and that's education assistance around the social, emotional, and mental health services and housing support services. Also, based on the proposed funding allocation, so 41% will receive the funding they asked for. 27% will receive partial funding. And then the organizations, 32% of that came in will not receive any funding. So our allocation of targeted ages. So this gives you a sense of who is being served in our community. And as you can see, the highest number is our teen and adolescents at over 26%. Second is for families. Third is all, where the services can be served by all. And then our younger children, elementary school. adults 13%, and then our seniors 8.7%. So it's a nice continuum of using the ARPA dollars to help all our residents from various different populations to support them. The diversity of data, this is a very important data point. So we ran, did some analysis around, again, these are the proposed applicants. So you can see 43%, so out of the applications, 43% has identified that the majority of their clients will be minority clients. And then 30% have identified that 50 to 75% will be the clients that they will serve. And then you can see 13%. I think what's important is that over 50%, actually even higher, almost 70% of the applicants that are being proposed for funding has identified their target population will be minority clients. And then we take it a little bit deeper. More than half of the applicants specifically outline services that targeted marginalized and underserved populations, and they're listed here. So what this means is that over 60% of the organizations that are being proposed have articulated, this is the population we are serving. This is our target population, and these are the individuals or populations that will be eligible for our services or for the services that we are serving. In poverty, low income, or uninsured, underinsured, LGBTQ+, homeless, immigrant community, undocumented community, English language learners. This is a lot wordy, so I'm not going to go over it, but I just wanted to point out that this is the reporting requirements, and it just gives a list of what is required. And again, many of these slides in a different slide deck for the live webinar has also been provided online for all potential applicants to see at the launch of the program back in January when we did the live webinars. And then a few further breakdowns. So 23 total applications is being proposed to be funded. 11 total applications will not be allocated. So we can only meet the demand of 67%. We also provided office hours where 47% of the applicants took advantage of that, where my department provided some clarifying questions. And I think you would agree with me that we had to be careful that we were not telling people how to write their application or giving different treatment to others, but just clarifying that I understand this right, or there was a document that's missing that it uploaded and so forth. Here's a big number that was very, very important, that 91% of the applications or that is being proposed before Unite had a match. And again, this really speaks to the sustainability that beyond federal dollars, that after this federal dollars, which is emergency funding, it was not intended to keep organizations, to fund programs forever. It was emergency funding, have identified a clear plan of making sure that beyond this emergency funding through the COVID ARPA funding program, 91% of applicants said we have a firm match to support this beyond this. So with the goal in mind, of putting our residents first, I would like to move forward with a vote on the panel review committees, obviously with your questions. I think what's important that I want to keep the Norwalk residents front and center. I want to thank every single nonprofit for applying. It was, again, the reviewers took their job seriously. It was a very difficult task to look at how to fund, where to fund, and where to put the funding based on the allocation. But I also want to thank again the reviewers for their commitment in their work to doing the right thing and doing what they taking this role seriously to provide and put forth some really credible and important organizations who are very clear on the client population they're serving and want to help and move forward as quickly as possible. So Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I'll entertain any questions as you all see fit.
Thank you very much, Chief Daniels. I'll open the floor to questions, and I see the smiling face of Councilmember Keegan with us. Thank you. Now able to ask questions on his own, not through my phone. Fabulous. Questions for Chief Daniels? Comments too, not just questions from the committee? Yes, Councilmember Burnett, then Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you, Chairperson Johnson. Thank you, Chief Daniels, for that presentation. I think it was very informative in providing us with a background on the complexity and the detail of the process. It's not an easy process, but I think the way you laid it out was very clear in terms of the necessary steps that we as a city have to take to ensure we're in total compliance with the federal government's requests as we distribute the ARPA funding. One thing that it did bring to light for me is that, well, it heightened our awareness, because I think we're very aware that there's several organizations doing some really great work in Norwalk, nonprofits. I think the process heightened our awareness that several, if not all of the nonprofits need assistance. They need some type of help. This particular process cannot help everyone. I mean, as you indicated, 11 nonprofits that are doing really good work will not receive funding, at least during this particular process. So my question is, because of this process, it has heightened our awareness. It's kind of a question and a comment that aside from this process, we need to look at what else we can do. And the we is the city of Norwalk. What else can we do to help the nonprofits that are doing really great work? And that help does not necessarily mean it has to be additional dollars. It could be help in terms of providing education, training, making connections, networking, so that the organizations, not just the ones that didn't receive the allocation, but all nonprofits that need assistance, have a better opportunity of advancing the good work that they're doing. So I'll pause there to say, are there any thoughts around what else we can do besides financial assistance to help all nonprofits, but let's focus on the 11 that did not receive the allocation. What else can we possibly do to assist them in their efforts?
Thank you for that question, Councilman Burnett. That is a great question. And I think it's a larger question around, because these are specific emergency funding. Remember, after these 2 years, the city doesn't have any programming that we fund presently. So after these 2 years, I think that's a larger question that, through council and my department is happy to participate in, to talk about, what other things that we can do to support just our nonprofit community. Well, my office does many of those things now. We provide network opportunities and we provide and share resources to the nonprofits around a variety of grant opportunities. Anytime something my office gets, if you're part of our newsletter or email list, you're receiving that. We have those conversations on the call. We just had our CDBG program presents to the nonprofit community, are the federal banking loan program that if you can get a Norwalk organization to support you, there's a tax deferment. I'm not familiar with everything, but we do at this point provide, as information comes into our office, to get that out into the nonprofit community so that they are informed and can potentially apply or just be better positioned to build capacity for their organizations.
Great. So I appreciate that. So I guess the message is, this is especially to the 11 organizations that did not receive the allocation, as well as to the nonprofits that did not even apply, that this is clearly on our radar, that we want to help and we're here to help. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. If I could, yeah, absolutely. I heard the comments as well, and that's just a conversation I think we should continue to have beyond this program of how we can support. What does that look like? Who is leading it? If there are potential resources. But again, I think that's a larger conversation that I think we all as a community need to have, and not just the city. I think other partners and other stakeholders should be a part of those conversations.
Thank you, Councilmember Burnett. And I agree, Chief Daniels, and I, as chair, I think that's an important conversation for us to have too. I see, yes, Councilman Keegan and then Councilmember Alterman. Thank you. Councilmember Keegan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And part of me says, why do I always have to go after Councilman Burnett, who so eloquently says what I wish I had said? But Greg did bring up some of the issues that I'm feeling. Yes, we are all here to help in any way that we can. And I think that, you know, everyone on the committee and Chief Daniels's office and anyone that had anything to do with this should stand up and take a bow, because we really tried to get it right. And that's why we're here a second time. And this is not about what we did wrong. We just want to make sure we get this right. And Chief Daniels, thank you for explaining it tonight the way you did. I have a much better understanding of the process, and I appreciate it. And once again, Greg Burnett, thank you for your words for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Keegan. Yes, Councilwoman Alterman.
Thank you, Chairperson Johnson. I'm going to echo a little bit of what both Mr. Burnett and Mr. Keegan said. I am really grateful for all the information that was given to us tonight. It answered, just even that presentation was, I think, the majority of the questions I had. And just so everyone knows, part of when I ask a question, my thought process is, if I have this question, there might be somebody that has a question. Sorry, there is a lot of echo. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, I don't know. If I have a question, I assume I'm not the only one that has some type of question. So I really like that Mr. Burnett said it doesn't always involve just giving funding, it can involve education. And I think, I know, like, I'm a little silly and I expect that everybody should help everybody else all the time. And that is not, you know, going to happen. But I think if we put a little bit of effort, we can get more people to help more people more of the time. But so I am really grateful for the information, and I saw how much work did go into the process. I will still reiterate, I think that there are some inherent flaws in any like system that government follows, and I hope we continue to work on that. But you know, for tonight's vote, I think everybody answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Alterman. Councilwoman Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair Johnson. I would like to thank Chief Daniels very much for this presentation. It is the reassurance that that we needed, that the public needed, that the process was done professionally and appropriately in terms of the guidance regarding ARPA funding. I concur with Mr. Keegan that Mr. Burnett just so eloquently expressed what a lot of us are feeling. We know what great work DeJuan does, his organization does with our kids, and so many other organizations, the others that did not receive the funding. So whatever we can do, and I hear, you've got your every other week phone call, you've got your newsletter, Mr. Daniels, there are things that you're already working on, but anything we can do as a committee to highlight some of these nonprofits and help them in any way, I hope we can pull something together moving forward.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Smith. I think that theme is definitely emerging, and I also want to thank the commenters, and I know there was a question about how one would define a startup, but I think the presentation was, for me, answered that question as well. So thank you, Chief Daniels, for that. Are there any other comments any committee members would like to make, or any other questions? I want to also echo my thanks to you, Chief Daniels, for putting together this presentation to really outline the requirements that we have with the federal government through ARPA, how you committed to a process, and then where the process led us. And I think that this presentation really did provide a lot of very important information, better said by Councilwoman Smith, that the public now also has because of this special meeting. So let's see, any other questions? I see all 5 of us. Questions or comments? Well, I'd like to then move to our next agenda item, which is an action item, which is for, I will enter it then, relating to the presentation that we received both tonight and previously with that information, both pieces of it. I'll read it and enter it now. 1, authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute any and all documents or amendments as may be necessary to disperse grant funding to nonprofit organizations allocated to the ARPA Community Recovery Fund, administered by the Community Services Department, to respond to and address community needs due to the negative economic impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. Do I have a motion? I saw Councilwoman Smith first. Thank you, Councilmember Keegan, for that as well. We could take that as a second. Okay, so it's entered in. And any comments or questions about this or discussion on the action item by committee members? I know we kind of already started that, but I see Councilmember Burnett. Thank you, Ms. Burnett.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. The only comment I have in the motion, and I see no reason to change it now, but with the assumption that it is approved at the committee level as we take it forward to the council, that we include in the motion the exact dollar amount of the approval that we're approving, along with the account number, because again, each and every dollar is accounted for, and the comptroller assigns an account number for all distribution of ARPA funds. So as we take, again, assuming this is approved, that when we take it forward to the council, we should approve the specific dollar amount of the distribution along with the account number associated with it. Thank you.
So much, Councilmember Burnett, Finance Chair, bringing that important piece of information. And Chief Daniels, I see you nodding, so that it is an agreement. Should this pass, then that would be included. Very good, very good. Thank you, Councilman Burnett. Any other comments, questions from the committee? Okay, so the motion's on the floor, so I can call for a vote. All in favor of the motion, you can raise your hand or say aye. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is 5 votes yes. Any abstentions? No votes. So it's unanimous. And this will move then to the whole council for the next meeting. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank especially the Community Services Department staff and Chief Daniels, of course. And I want to thank the community for coming out, and especially to the committee for being at a special meeting. And for those of you who have more than one meeting tonight, appreciate it very much for this really great conversation. And we will definitely move forward as a community services committee together to do this work continually. And thanks to that. I see Ms. Councilwoman Smith with a hand raised.
One more thing before we go.
Of course.
Ms. Estrella, could you introduce us to your little person there?
Sure. Sorry. I know that they were making appearances throughout the video. One of the hard things of doing a Zoom in the house. But here's a littlest edition.
Aww.
This is Amelia. As you can see, she's very alert. And now she's looking at her grandma. Yep. So she's about 3 months. She just turned 3 months.
Very sweet. Thank you. We have cats and dogs and babies.
2 cats, 1 dog, and then a set of twins, her older sisters, who also like to make appearances.
Keeps it real, you know? Thank you.
She's precious. Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Smith. That's so exciting to meet her. And that's one of the best things about Zoom, right? We get to meet little family members. So of all sorts. All right. So I would ask Amelia, I would ask Amelia for a motion, but she's not on our committee, so I'm going to ask for another motion.
My mic's open, so I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, a motion to adjourn. All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Voting to adjourn now is unanimous. Thank you all very much. Have a
Thank
good
you very
night.
much, council leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Daniels.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Chief. Bye-bye. Good night, all.